The night was cold in Dustwater, a town that reeked of cheap whiskey and broken souls. Wind howled through the cracks in the saloon's wooden walls, carrying dust and echoes of laughter that wasn't real. Beneath the flickering lanterns, men drank away what little hope they had left, while the piano man played a tune so worn out it sounded like sorrow itself. At the far corner of the room, a young woman stood beside a man who should have been her protector, her father. Her name was Evelyn Grace, 30 years old but already aged by hardship. Her once bright eyes were dim, her hands clenched around the tattered shawl she wore. She had begged him not to bring her here, not to do this. But Samuel Grace's debts were heavier than his conscience. He slammed his empty glass on the bar and shouted, $200. That's all I ask for the girl. She's strong, can cook, clean, do whatever a man needs. The saloon went silent. Even the piano stilled. A few men laughed, thinking he was drunk. Others stared at Evelyn with the hungry eyes of wolves. She felt her knees weaken. Pa. She whispered, voice trembling. You can't mean this. Samuel didn't meet her gaze. He only muttered, better a man takes you than the men I owe. His voice cracked. You'll understand someday. From the shadows, near the door where no white man dared linger, an Apache warrior watched the scene unfold. His name was Tarak, tall and built like a mountain. His long black hair was tied behind him, feathers braided near the ends. His chest bore the scars of battles fought long before this night, and his dark eyes missed nothing. He had come to Dustwater only to trade hides for supplies, but what he saw froze him in place. He had seen cruelty before, seen fathers cast out their sons for pride or land. But selling a daughter for whiskey debt, that was something else. $200. A rancher called from the bar, laughing. I'll take her. Could use a woman to scrub my floors. Evelyn stepped back, shaking her head. The rancher reached for her arm ruff, claiming. She struggled, her voice breaking into sobs. The laughter of the men cut through her like knives. That's when Tarak moved. The saloon doors creaked open wider as he stepped forward. The room fell into a hush again. The warrior's presence carried a quiet power, something primal and commanding. Men turned away, unsure whether to mock or fear him. I will pay, Tarak said, his voice low, accented by his people's tongue. The rancher laughed. You got money, red man? Tarak didn't answer. He reached into his belt pouch, placing 5 gold coins on the counter. The saloon keeper blinked. The coins were more than Samuel had ever seen in one place. 5 gold, Tarak said. More than $200. She goes with me. The silence was heavy enough to crush breath. Samuel's eyes darted between the coins and his daughter's tear-streaked face. He swallowed hard. Guilt twisted his mouth. It's a fair deal, he muttered. Evelyn gasped. No, Pa, please. She tried to grab his arm, but he pushed her away gently, as if ashamed to look at her. Tarak stepped closer. You will not be harmed, he said softly. I will take you far from this place. His tone wasn't rough like the others. It was calm, almost kind. But Evelyn's fear was too deep to trust anyone now. She looked around. The crowd had already lost interest, laughing again, drinking again. Her life was nothing more than a passing show. The rancher cursed under his breath and went back to his whiskey. Tarak took off his leather cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. Come, he said. She hesitated, eyes wet, throat tight. But behind her, her father couldn't meet her gaze. The saloon doors swung open again, letting in the bitter cold. As she stepped outside beside the Apache warrior, the night sky stretched wide and starless. Horses shifted in the dark, the wind whispering through the dry grass. She turned one last time toward the saloon, where the laughter of men echoed like ghosts. Her father's silhouette stood framed by lamplight, then disappeared. Tarak mounted his horse, extending a hand. "You are free now," he said quietly. Evelyn stared at his hand, unsure whether freedom was truly what this was. But with nowhere else to go, she took it. The horse moved forward, hooves striking the dirt road that led away from Dustwater. Behind them, the town faded into darkness. Ahead, a strange fate waited one neither of them could yet name. The chill of the desert night wrapped around Evelyn like a shroud as Tarak's horse carried them away from Dustwater. She sat behind him, clutching the leather reins, her fingers trembling. The silence between them was heavy, so heavy that even the whispering wind felt respectful of it. She had not spoken since they left the saloon. Her mind replayed her father's face, his eyes hollow with guilt and drink. Every time she tried to picture home, all she could see was the faint outline of that man she had once called Pa. Fading behind a door of laughter and shame, Tarak rode steadily, his back straight and his long black hair flowing like a dark river in the wind. His body was strong, every muscle moving with controlled precision. Around his neck hung strings of turquoise and bone, the symbols of his people. The Apache Bought. When the moon rose higher, Tarak slowed the horse near a cluster of rocks. A small fire pit stood there, hidden from the road. He dismounted and helped Evelyn down. She hesitated, uncertain whether to run or stay, but the vast emptiness around them reminded her she had nowhere to go. "You will rest here," Tarak said quietly, his voice deep but gentle. He began gathering wood from a pile he had stacked earlier. His movements were methodical, practiced. He had been here before. Evelyn stood in the glow of the moon, her arms crossed against the cold. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking the quiet. Tarak didn't look up. "Do what?" "Buy me. You don't even know me." He placed a stick on the fire and struck flint against steel. Sparks flickered, then a small flame began to grow. "I did not buy you," he said after a pause. "I bought your freedom." Evelyn scoffed, though it came out more like a sob. "Freedom? You think I'm free now? My father sold me like cattle, and now I'm alone with a man I don't even know." Tarak turned his gaze to her. In the flickering firelight, his dark eyes softened. "You are safer with me than with those men in the saloon." She looked away, hugging herself. "Safe doesn't mean I'm free." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his horse and untied a small pouch. From it, he pulled a piece of dried meat and a skin of water, handing both to her. "Eat," he said. "You have not since morning." Evelyn stared at the food for a moment before taking it. Hunger overcame pride. As she ate, she watched him sit across from her, silent, watching the fire as if reading old memories in its flames. After a long while, she asked, "Do you live near here?" He nodded. "Beyond the canyon." "My people once did too, before the soldiers came." "So, you live alone now?" "Yes," Tarak said simply. "Alone is better than chained." His words hung between them, heavy with truth. Evelyn felt a strange ache in her chest. She didn't understand this man, this warrior who could buy a woman's freedom with gold yet speak of loneliness like it was an old friend. The fire crackled, painting their faces in shades of gold and shadow. A coyote howled in the distance. Evelyn wrapped his cloak tighter around her shoulders. "Tarak," she said softly, testing his name, "what will you do with me?" He looked up slowly, his eyes reflecting the flame. "You will stay with me until you decide where your path leads. Then you may go." "Just like that?" He nodded. A bird in a cage learns to fly again only when the door is left open. Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, not with gentleness, not with understanding. When the wind picked up, Tarak stood and threw another piece of wood on the fire. "Sleep," he said. "We travel at sunrise." Evelyn lay down on a blanket he had laid for her. The earth was cold beneath her, but she could feel warmth from the fire and from him. She watched him as her eyes grew heavy, the outline of his strong, silent form against the stars. Before sleep took her, she whispered, "Thank you." Tarak turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "You need not thank me, Evelyn Grace," he murmured. "The world has taken too much from you already." And as the firelight flickered across his scarred skin and the beads of turquoise around his neck, Evelyn realized that maybe, just maybe, this man, this Apache, was not her captor at all. He might be her only way back to herself. By dawn, the fire had died to embers, and the desert was painted gold by the rising sun. Tarak was already awake, tightening the saddle straps on his horse. Evelyn stirred beneath the blanket, her eyes squinting against the light. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memory of last night flooded back like a cold river. "Come," Tarak said, glancing at her. "We must ride before the heat rises." Evelyn stood, brushing sand from her skirt. Her limbs ached, but she obeyed. She climbed behind him again, her hands hesitating before resting on his waist. He said nothing, only urged the horse forward, and together they rode into the endless horizon. For hours the desert stretched in silence. Dry brush, red rock, and distant mesas rolled by like ghosts of another world. Tarak rode steady, his back straight, his bare shoulders bronzed by the sun. She could feel the power in him, the calm strength of someone who belonged to the land itself. Finally, the ground dipped, and the trail wound down into a hidden canyon. The walls rose high on either side, painted in layers of crimson and gold. At the base ran a narrow stream, its water glimmering like glass. There, nestled beneath a grove of cottonwoods, stood a small dwelling made of clay and stone. Evelyn gasped softly. It was quiet, beautiful, an oasis in the middle of nowhere. Tarak dismounted and helped her down. "This is my home," he said simply. She looked around. There were signs of life. A woven blanket hanging on a line, clay pots near the fire pit, a carved flute resting on a rock. Everything was carefully placed, cared for. Yet it all felt touched by loneliness. "You live here alone?" she asked. He nodded once. "Since the soldiers burned my village." Evelyn froze, the weight of his words cutting deep. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Tarak didn't respond right away. He knelt beside the stream, dipping his hands into the water. "Do not be sorry," he said finally. "They took much, but not everything. I still breathe. I still remember." She watched him for a long moment, noticing the old scars that crossed his back fin, silver lines that told stories of survival. He wasn't just strong. He was enduring. When he rose, he offered her a drink from the stream. "This water is safe. Drink." Evelyn knelt beside him and cupped the cool water in her hands. It tasted pure, like something untouched by men or greed. She let it run over her fingers, feeling the earth's calm settle into her bones. Afterward, Tarak showed her the small garden he kept behind the dwelling corn stalks, beans, herbs growing against the canyon wall. "The land still gives," he said, "if we treat it with respect. You grow all this alone?" she asked. He nodded. "My mother taught me before she passed." Evelyn lowered her gaze. "I never had a mother long enough to teach me much." They stood in silence, the only sound being the rustle of leaves and the steady murmur of the stream. For the first time, Evelyn didn't feel afraid of the silence. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. When the sun climbed higher, Tarak began preparing food, a stew made of beans, herbs, and wild roots. The smell was rich and earthy. Evelyn helped where she could, though she felt clumsy under his quiet watch. "You are not used to this life," Tarak said softly. "No," she admitted. "I come from noise and bitterness. My father's debts, the town's cruelty. I thought I'd never escape it." Tarak stirred the pot slowly. "Sometimes to find peace, one must walk through pain." His words struck her. She looked at him, really looked this time. His face was calm, strong, but his eyes, they carried a sadness deeper than any words could hold. When they sat to eat, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. The fear that had gripped her since Dustwater began to ease. Replaced by a fragile trust. As dusk fell, Tarak played his flute. The haunting melody filled the canyon, echoing against the red walls like the voice of memory itself. Evelyn listened, eyes glistening. "What does it mean?" she asked softly. He paused. "It is a song of remembrance," he said, "for those we lost and for those still trying to find their way home." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Do you think I'll ever find mine?" Tarak looked at her across the fire, the flames dancing between them. "Maybe," he said. "But first, you must learn who you are when the world is quiet." The canyon fell silent again, save for the soft crackle of the fire. Evelyn turned her gaze upward to the stars beginning to appear. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like someone's burden or shame. She felt seen, and though neither spoke another word, both knew the night had changed something between them forever. The days that followed moved slowly in the canyon, like the steady rhythm of the stream that ran past Tarak's dwelling. Evelyn had never known quiet like this, the kind that seeped into her soul and made her think of who she'd been before everything fell apart. She woke each morning to the smell of wood smoke and wild sage. Tarak would already be awake, bare-chested and working near the garden, his long black hair catching the morning light. He rarely spoke at first, but his presence was steady solid. Like the canyon walls around them. At first, she stayed near the stream, washing clothes or helping him grind herbs. But soon, she found herself watching him more than working. There was something about him, something calm yet powerful. When he moved, it was with purpose. When he spoke, it was with meaning. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Evelyn tried to help him carry water from the stream. The bucket was heavy, and she stumbled. Tarak reached out, his strong hand catching her arm before she fell. "You do not need to do everything alone," he said softly. Evelyn froze, feeling the warmth of his hand through the thin fabric of her sleeve. Her heart beat faster than she wanted it to. "I've always had to," she said quietly. "No one ever helped me without expecting something back." Tarak released her arm gently. "Then they were not truly helping you." She met his eyes. They were deep, almost unreadable, but there was no cruelty in them. Just truth. For a moment, she wanted to ask him everything who he'd lost. What he'd seen, but she didn't. Something about his quiet made her respect it. That night, the wind picked up through the canyon, carrying the scent of rain. Tarak repaired the roof while Evelyn kept the fire alive. When he finally sat beside her, droplets of rain clung to his skin, and the firelight danced over the beads of turquoise that hung from his neck. "Will the storm last?" she asked. He looked toward the sky. "Only for a while. All storms end." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You speak like the land itself." He chuckled softly, a rare sound. "The land teaches, if you listen." As thunder rolled overhead, she felt something stir inside her, a strange comfort she hadn't felt since childhood. They sat close, the firelight flickering between them, and for a brief moment she forgot how broken her life had been. Then Tarak's gaze turned distant. "Do you hear it?" he asked. Evelyn listened. The sound of rain against stone, the wind whispering through the canyon, it all blended with something faint. A rhythm, almost like drumming. "What is that?" she asked. Tarak's jaw tightened. "It is memory." He stood and walked to the mouth of the canyon, where the rain misted down. Evelyn followed, curious. His voice was low when he finally spoke again. "My village was here once," he said, "before the soldiers came. They said we must move, that this land was not ours. But my people had buried their ancestors beneath these rocks. When we refused, they burned our homes. My father died fighting. My mother and sister. He stopped, closing his eyes. They did not live to see another sunrise. Evelyn's breath caught. I'm sorry, Tarak. He nodded slightly. I buried them myself. The drums you hear is only the wind against the cliffs. But sometimes it feels like they still call to me. She stepped closer, hesitating. You stayed here because of them. Yes, he said simply. And because the world beyond this canyon is not meant for men like me. Evelyn swallowed hard. Or women like me. He turned to her then, really looking at her. Perhaps that is why the Creator crossed our paths. The rain slowed, the last drops glimmering in the firelight. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears she couldn't explain. She didn't know if it was sorrow for him, or for herself, or for the strange bond that was forming between two people who had both been discarded by the world. When the night grew cold, Tarak placed his cloak over her shoulders. Sleep, he said. Tomorrow I will show you the high ridge. You can see forever from there. She nodded, clutching the cloak around her dot as she lay by the fire. Listening to the rain fade into silence, she realized something had changed inside her. The canyon didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like healing, and though Tarak had said little, his kindness spoke louder than any words. For the first time in her life, Evelyn Grace began to believe she was worth saving. The morning after the storm was clear and golden. Water dripped from the canyon walls like silver threads, and the air smelled of wet earth and sage. Evelyn woke to find Tarak already saddling the horse. His long black hair was damp, and the sunlight glinted off the turquoise beads that hung around his neck. Come, he said quietly. We ride to the ridge. Evelyn gathered her shawl and followed him, still feeling the warmth of the cloak he had given her the night before. The ground was soft underfoot, and the sound of the stream echoed faintly behind them. She climbed onto the horse behind Tarak, and they rode upward along a narrow trail that wound around the canyon side. The higher they went, the more the world opened. The sky stretched vast and endless, the horizon painted in soft blues and golds. When they finally reached the ridge, Evelyn gasped. Below them lay the whole valley-red rocks, winding rivers, distant mesas glowing under the morning sun. It was breathtaking, untouched by the greed or cruelty of men. Tarak dismounted and stood at the edge, looking out. This is where my father stood, he said. He said the earth remembers every footstep, every sorrow. The land carries our stories even when men forget them. Evelyn stepped beside him. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of cedar and freedom. It's beautiful, she whispered. Tarak nodded slowly. It was once our hunting ground. My people called it Nasho, the place of spirits. We believed the wind carried messages from those who came before. Evelyn glanced at him. His voice had softened, but there was pain beneath it, like a wound that never fully healed. Do you still hear them? She asked. He turned to her, his eyes dark and steady. Sometimes. When I forget who I am, they remind me. Evelyn lowered her gaze. I wish I had something to remind me who I am. I feel like I've been running so long, I don't even remember what I'm running from anymore. Tarak's gaze softened. You are not running now. His words hung in the air. The wind seemed to still, carrying only the echo of truth. Evelyn looked at him, and for a heartbeat, their eyes held two souls stripped bare by loss and loneliness. But before she could speak, Tarak turned away. Come, he said. There is something I want to show you. He led her along the ridge to a flat stone covered with carvings, symbols etched deep into the rock. Worn but still visible. These are the marks of my people, he said. My father carved some of them before the soldiers came. Each mark tells of a life of birth, of love, of loss. Evelyn knelt, tracing her fingers over the ancient symbols. And this one? She asked, pointing to a spiral. Tarak's voice was quiet. That one means journey. It never ends. It only changes direction. Her throat tightened. Maybe. Maybe my journey was meant to lead here. He looked at her then, and for the first time, his guarded expression faltered. Perhaps, he said, but your heart must choose what comes next. The words struck her deeply. She didn't know what she wanted. Freedom, safety, love, but she knew that being near Tarak made her feel all three in ways she couldn't explain. They stood together in silence as the sun climbed higher. Tarak's skin glowed bronze in the light, his chest rising with slow, steady breaths. Evelyn's gaze lingered on him, on the strength in his form, the calm in his presence, the mystery that wrapped around him like the desert wind dot when they rode back down. The world felt changed. The canyon seemed softer, more alive. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Tarak took out a small wooden box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet inlaid with turquoise. It belonged to my sister, he said quietly. Before she died, she said it was meant for someone who carried sorrow but still had the courage to stand. He reached across the fire and placed it in Evelyn's hands. It is yours now. Evelyn blinked, unable to speak. Her fingers trembled as she held it. Tarak, I can't take this. You already have, he said simply. You have carried pain long enough. It is time you carry something beautiful. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know if it was gratitude, grief, or something deeper, but she knew her life had changed the moment. She stepped into that canyon dot, and as the firelight flickered between them, she realized Tarak wasn't just a savior or a stranger. He was becoming her destiny. The morning sun rose slow and red over the canyon, spilling light across the sleeping earth. The air was cool, silent but for the crackle of dying embers. Evelyn stirred beneath the blanket, her eyes heavy, her body sore from the night's ride. When she turned her head, she saw him, Tarak, sitting alone on the edge of the cliff, his broad back glistening in the dawn. His tribal jewelry caught the sun, glimmering like stars upon bronze skin. He hadn't slept. Not after the attack. The outlaws had followed them through the night, and only Tarak's cunning had kept them alive. He'd led Evelyn through narrow canyons, across hidden streams, and now at last they rested. Evelyn rose quietly and walked to him. You should sleep, she said softly, her voice rough from dust. Tarak didn't look back. Sleep is for those with peace in their heart. She knelt beside him, watching the vast world below. You saved me again, she said. Why do you keep doing that, Tarak? You don't even know me. He turned then, his dark eyes catching hers. I know pain when I see it, he said simply. And I know what it means to be owned. The words struck her like an arrow. She looked down, hands trembling slightly. The memory of her father's voice in that saloon, the smell of whiskey, the sound of laughter as he sold her to men, she could still hear it. But she didn't cry. Not this time. Tarak stood, stretching his powerful arms toward the sky. We must move soon, he said. They will not stop until they find you. Evelyn looked at him then, not as her savior, but as a man haunted by something deeper. And you? She asked. What will you do when this ends? He hesitated. When it ends, I will return to the mountains. To my people, what remains of them. The silence between them grew heavy. She could sense there was more he wasn't saying. Something about the way his jaw tightened when he mentioned his tribe, the flicker of pain in his eyes. Tell me, Tarak, she said gently. What happened to them? He looked to the horizon, his voice low and steady. Soldiers came. They called it peacekeeping. But peace to them meant ashes. My mother, my brothers. His hand clenched around the hilt of his knife. I buried them with my own hands. Evelyn felt her breath catch. I'm sorry, she whispered. He turned to her then, eyes fierce but calm. Do not be sorry. You cannot undo what white men did, but you can choose to be different." The words hit deep, tearing through the guilt she'd carried since birth. She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm, rough, scarred, alive. "Maybe we both deserve a chance to start over," she said. For the first time, he smiled. It was faint, almost hidden beneath the weight he bore, but it was real. "Perhaps," he said, "but starting over comes with a price." The distant echo of hoofbeats cut through their moment. Tarak's head snapped up. "They've found us." Evelyn's heart jolted. "The men from the saloon?" He nodded once, pulling the rifle from his horse's saddle. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Before she could protest, Tarak was already moving, his body fluid and precise, his long black hair whipping behind him. He crouched low, blending with the rocks, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Evelyn hid near a fallen log, her pulse racing. The riders emerged, 3 of them. Dusty armed, laughing. Tarak waited until they drew close. Then, with a sudden cry that split the morning air, he rose and fired. One man fell instantly. The others scrambled, shouting, returning fire. Bullets whistled past Evelyn's head as she clung to the ground, trembling. Tarak moved like a shadow, swift and merciless. His bare chest glistened with sweat, his muscles flexing as he reloaded. Another shot, another outlaw down. The last one fled. Tarak didn't chase. He simply watched him vanish into the desert, breathing hard. Evelyn ran to him, her hands shaking. "You're bleeding." He looked down, a shallow graze along his side. "It is nothing," he said through gritted teeth. She tore a piece of her dress, pressing it to his wound. "You call this nothing?" Tarak met her eyes, and for the first time there was no wall between them. Just exhaustion and something tender, unspoken. He placed his hand over hers. "I have fought many battles," he said quietly, "but this one feels different." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Because of me?" He nodded. "Because now I have something to lose." The canyon wind carried their silence, 2 broken souls finding meaning in the chaos. And though the world beyond still hunted them, for that one moment, neither cared. They were no longer captor and captive. Warrior and woman, they were something else entirely, something neither of them had ever known. Home. The dawn broke slowly over the canyon, spilling golden light across the rugged cliffs and the quiet stream below. The night had passed without further threat. The outlaws who had hunted them had disappeared into the desert, and for the first time in weeks, the canyon felt truly theirs. Evelyn rose from the blanket she had slept on, brushing dew from her skirt. Her eyes found Tarak, already awake, shirtless as always, his muscular frame glistening in the early light. His long black hair fell over his shoulders, catching glints from the turquoise and bone beads that adorned his chest and neck. Even in the quiet, he radiated strength, calm, and a presence that made the world feel less frightening. "Morning," she said softly, her voice still hoarse from yesterday's events. Tarak turned, offering a faint smile. "Morning, Evelyn." "Sleep well?" "I did," she replied, though she knew it was more than the night's rest that made her feel lighter. "I feel different." He nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "The canyon heals those who let it. You are not the girl from Dustwater anymore." She looked down, memories of the saloon flooding back, her father's shameful betrayal, the laughter of cruel men, the despair that had shadowed her life. And then she thought of the journey that had followed, the ride into the canyon, the quiet evenings by the fire, the ridge with its ancient carvings, and the moments of vulnerability and courage they had shared. Each memory stitched together a new version of herself. I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered, stepping closer to him. "You do not need to," Tarak said simply. "Your freedom is thanks enough. And perhaps your trust." Evelyn's eyes met his. For a long moment, the canyon held its breath with them. She realized the depth of what had grown between them, not just gratitude or dependence, but respect, understanding, and a fragile thread of something tender that neither had dared name. Tarak reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The world beyond this canyon will not always be kind," he said quietly, "but here you are safe, and I will protect that as long as I breathe." Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking deep. "Then I will stay," she said, her voice firm. "Not because I have to, but because I want to." He studied her face, and the faintest shadow of a smile softened his strong features. "You are brave," he said. "Perhaps braver than I expected." They moved together to the stream, letting the water run over their hands and feet, washing away the dust of the desert and the ghosts of the past. The sound of flowing water mingled with the whispers of the canyon wind, a song of rebirth and quiet triumph. Afterward, they returned to the dwelling, where the small garden swayed gently in the morning breeze. Tarak handed her a small basket. "Plant what you like," he said. "These lands are as much yours as mine now." Evelyn knelt, fingers sifting through soil, and for the first time she felt rooted. Not trapped, not sold, but grounded. Each seed she pressed into the earth was a symbol of a new life, one chosen by her, not forced upon her. Tarak watched her, silent and patient. He felt the weight of the past loosen just a little, replaced by the quiet certainty that they had each found a companion strong enough to bear sorrow, brave enough to endure, and gentle enough to heal Dot as the sun climbed higher. Painting the canyon in shades of gold and amber, Evelyn and Tarak sat side by side. Their hands touched, fingers entwined. Not as captor and captive, not as savior and rescued, but as equals, survivors, and perhaps something more. Evelyn leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the beads and scars. "I never imagined life could be like this," she murmured. Tarak's voice was low, tender, carrying the weight of his past and the promise of the future. "Neither did I, but the Creator gave us this place, and gave us each other. That is enough." The canyon stretched before them, endless and untamed, yet somehow safe. The wind whispered through the cliffs, carrying away the echoes of fear, pain, and loss. In its place, it brought hope, peace, and a new beginning. Evelyn Grace finally smiled, not the weary, frightened smile of a woman sold and betrayed, but a true smile, born of freedom, trust, and a love that had grown quietly, surely, and fiercely in the heart of the Old West. Tarak rested his arm around her shoulders, and together they watched the sun rise higher, bathing the canyon in light. Two souls, scarred but unbroken, had found their way to a new dawn, and for the first time in their lives, the world felt full of possibility.